There must be a lot of people Zooming right now. But thank you for joining us today on Zooming In. This has been a really positive way to engage with graduates during social distancing and to learn more from our wonderful graduate population. And today it is my pleasure to introduce someone whom I consider one of my key mentors. She served as keynote for Women in the Law and moderated a panel for us at another Women in the Law who it was on international law and women practicing in that field. And she's also served as a keynote speaker for me at a recent DC regional event when she was living in DC. Welcome, Lee. So good to see you.
So good to see you, Mielle. And of course, I'd do anything for you. You're so awesome. Thanks for everything you do for Northeastern.
Oh, I appreciate that. So I'm going to dive into your bio first and read some background, and then we'll dive into the questions. Leocadia Zak became the 9th president of Agnes Scott College in July of 2018. She's a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Mount Holyoke College, which recognized her as a Woman of Influence in 2012. She holds a JD degree from our university, Northeastern University School of Law. She's become very active in the Atlanta community, which is where she's based now. For example, she's treasurer of the Atlanta Regional Council for Higher Education. She's a member of the Rotary Club of Atlanta. And she serves on the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Advisory Board. And she's a trustee of Global Communities Partners for Good, which is an international nonprofit organization. She has a very extensive background in international economic development and international project finance. In 2010, Zak was appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the US Senate to serve as the director of the US Trade and Development Agency. It's an independent federal agency that advances economic development and US commercial interests in developing and middle income countries. She first joined that agency in 2000, and prior to her appointment as director, she served as general counsel, deputy director, acting director under both the Bush and Obama administrations. She had many accomplishments during her time at the USTDA. She created a global procurement initiative. She testified before Congress on behalf of the agency's programs, and many, many other accomplishments. But the accomplishment that means the most to her is the USTDA's recognition for 5 consecutive years as one of the best places to work. And that's measured by the Federal Employment Viewpoint Survey. Before her time in public sector, Lee was in our own city. She spent 18 years at the Boston law firm Mintz, Levin, Cohn, Ferris, Glovsky, and Popio. Wow. Where she joined as an associate in 1982. At the firm, she practiced in the areas of international and domestic project finance, and she became a partner there in 1990. She teaches or has taught as an adjunct faculty member at Georgetown University Law Center and BU School of Law, including team teaching with her husband, Kenneth Hansen, a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of Norton, Rose, and Fulbright. I love that, team teaching. So now we're going to dive in. Welcome, and thank you everybody for sticking with us through our little technical glitch at the start. First, let me ask you, how are you and Ken doing, especially during COVID and this public health crisis?
Thank you so much, Mielle. And first, I do want to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth, which commemorates the end of slavery. And I have to say that Ken and I are doing well here in Georgia. We are very fortunate to be on the campus of Agnes Scott College. You see a little bit of it behind me, which is absolutely beautiful. But I will confess that we really miss the students and our faculty and staff. It's too quiet. We need to have a little more of action around the campus, and we're looking forward to that in the fall again.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're doing okay, both of you. Is that your house? What's behind you? Tell me.
That is our library at Agnes Scott College. And it's also a banner outside the library that indicates that Agnes Scott is #1 with respect to innovation for liberal arts colleges in the country, and also #1 for first-year experiences for colleges and universities across the country. But that's our beautiful library in the background.
It is gorgeous, and I'm glad to hear that. I saw you invited some of our Agnes Scott parents, so hopefully some of them are joining us as well, and we'll learn a little bit about both you and your background. Um, and obviously you mentioned Juneteenth, and we've had a lot of, discussion and bringing to light some of the racial inequities that are present in our country still today. And we had, lots of marches and protests, etc. How is Atlanta faring? And do you think the discussion will it rise, can continue to rise and be prominent in the coming weeks and months and years? How are you feeling about that?
Well, I have to say, during the time of COVID, Agnes Scott recognized the fact that we needed to highlight the inequities in society. So one of the things that we started was a podcast and a webinar series during that time that indicated that COVID itself was highlighting some of the inequities. It wasn't necessarily creating all of the inequities, but highlighting them. And that's really what is underneath what is going on right now. That it is systemic racism that people are talking about. It is in the senseless killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rashad Brooks recently here in Atlanta. And one of the things that we at Agnes Scott have seen is the importance of getting people together for conversation. I'm very proud of our campus community. Our students, our faculty, our alumni are embracing the discussion. One of the beautiful things about being at Agnes Scott is that we have no ethnic nor racial diversity in our campus. So for years, we've been focusing on these issues and including diversity and inclusion, but we always can get better. And one of the things we're doing is extending that conversation, not only on our campus, but extending the courageous conversations via these vehicles, wonderful technology like we're doing here today, to our community as well. And I'm very delighted that the campus is one of 23 centers across the country that is focusing on hate and addressing hate and racial equity and transformation. So we're designated as one of 23 centers, and we're working together to educate the community through courageous conversations.
That's great. We obviously have our Civil Rights and Restorative Justice program at Northeastern University School of Law, who have been working on those types of issues and going back to crimes committed during the Jim Crow era and trying to solve some of those with our fantastic students who are part of that program. We've had a lot of discussions at NU. We actually had a day of reflection after George Floyd was killed, and we had that was led by Margaret Burnham, our Dean Hackney, and many others. And so we've been addressing those issues here as well. And I did want to point out that the week that George Floyd was killed in those horrific 8 minutes, Lee suggested we move her discussion so that we could have on Rasan Hall. And we had a very fulsome discussion about racial inequities, and he did a fantastic job, and he's been in demand highly since then. But so yeah, I didn't want to gloss over that. It's Juneteenth. I wanted to hear what you all were working on. I'm going back a bit in time now, taking you back. How did you select Northeastern Law, and did you always plan on becoming a lawyer, or what were your areas of interest maybe in college?
Well, I think what we're doing right now and the fact that we are focused on social inequities is really what brought me and social justice to Northeastern. That when I always wanted to be a lawyer, at least since I was in junior high. I found a letter that my aunt had received and that when I talked about wanting to be a lawyer, she kept it all those years. And it was because of an injustice that I saw. It was an injustice with respect to a neighbor of mine, and the feeling helpless to be able to do something about it. And one of the things I wanted to ensure was that I was never in a position again where I would not be able to do something. So the focus by Northeastern on social justice was what drew me to Northeastern, but also the focus on cooperative education. I grew up in an environment where I truly believed that you learn by doing, that the education is extremely important, but also the learning by doing is something that is incredibly valuable as well. And so it was a perfect fit to be at Northeastern.
That's great. And we're so fortunate that you chose us. So we feel lucky. I'm going to dive again into your past a little bit. You spent a significant amount of time as the head of the U.S. Trade and Development Agency under Obama. First, are you in touch with any of your other colleagues? Are they still there? I was able to meet one of your colleagues whom I love and adore. Are they still there? How have things changed since you left? And this is, a little bit of a loaded question because I'm sure things have changed significantly. But I wanted to shine the light on maybe some of those differences from when you were there to now. And then thirdly, what elements of that role do you bring to the Agnes Scott presidency?
Well, thank you. I truly love my time at USTDA. I think it's the best agency in the federal government. I still think it's the best agency in the federal government. I will have to say, I was disappointed in the transition. That I had been in government and seen transitions before. I'd seen transitions from Democrat to Republican, Republican to Democrat. But this was a really unfortunate transition, both with respect to the lack of preparation with respect to the transition, and also the way that the career staff was treated in the transition. So unfortunately, most of the people that I worked with are not there.
Okay.
Some of them are, and there still is no Senate confirmed head of the agency.
Oh my goodness.
All this time, Darrell Issa was nominated, but because of his background, he was unable to receive confirmation and he withdrew. And there still remains no head. And, unfortunately, a woman of color who was a career individual was the acting head. She was removed. And a white male was put in her place. So I'm extremely disappointed. Yeah. I love the people who are there. I always will love the agency. The career staff just do such an amazing job. And, that's one of the things we have to do is recognize that, there are public servants who really believe in the mission, and they will continue to stay and work and do their best. So love the agency, look forward to what it will be in the future, but disappointed in the transition.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then my last question there was, what skill set that you developed during that time do you think you bring to this current role as president of Agnes Scott?
Well, I think one of the things that was really valuable was having the opportunity, and again, I think a lot about my Northeastern education, that it was the ability to change. While I was at USTDA, I started there originally as a general counsel in senior executive service. And then I was asked to be a deputy. So I transitioned from being general counsel into the business side, and I was the chief operating officer of the agency, and then was thrilled to be asked by President Obama to lead the agency. So one of the very important aspects was to, when opportunity knocks on your door, to take it and to take that risk. Also, I think from Northeastern, that ability to change, to try different jobs and opportunities are something that you learn as a result of having different co-ops. So that was something that I had the opportunity to experience while I was at USTDA. And one of the things we really focused on was innovation. Okay. And I think that is very much, why Agnes Scott appealed to me is the fact that, Agnes Scott has an experience that is referred to as Summit, which is a part of our curriculum. It focuses on global learning as well as women's leadership. That just spoke to me. It has been my life and my career in those two areas. And on top of that, it's an institution that's known for innovation. So it was a perfect fit in bringing the skills that I've learned throughout my career to play at the college.
Perfect. Okay, I just have to ask, and I think I've asked you this before, but for our listeners, did you get to travel with Obama? And is he as cool as he seems like he is?
He's even better than you might think. I had the distinct honor of traveling with him in South Africa when he announced the Power Africa initiative. I had traveled with him on many occasions, and very early in his first trips to China. Had a wonderful opportunity to go with him to India and the delegation in India, where National Day was celebrating the US. It was very special. He is an amazing, bright, talented, compassionate individual.
Oh, so good to hear. That's what I think, but I wanted to just check in. Now, one of our key lessons we wanted to talk about today is what makes a great leader in your opinion and from what you've learned. What qualities do you think encompass a great leader? I'm in touch with quite a few graduates during this time and in the last 4 or 5 months who've had to shift their styles a bit and really contemplate what their teams need during, social distancing, COVID, trying to get people energized from afar, maybe not having that in-person touch. Can you talk about that a little bit? What qualities and how you've maybe had to shift a little bit?
No, I think that's a fantastic question. And I think one of the things that makes a great leader is the fact that you're always learning. So, throughout the years, I'm adding to the skills or things that I examine and think make a great leader. I think to begin with, it is someone who listens, but not only listens, but hears. You have to be present, and people have to believe, and you do have to hear them. One of the ways to demonstrate that you have heard them is a leader acts on the information. It's one thing to go and just listen and say, but nothing changes. You have to be able to bring change to an organization and to act and to encourage others, because you don't act alone. So it's encouraging others to act, it's encouraging innovation, it's encouraging change as part of it. So I think those are sort of the mainstays that I've seen with respect to leadership. I think the one thing that COVID has really brought forward, and it's a really interesting thing for, I think, lawyers in particular, is the need for compassion. And I will say, I think oftentimes lawyers in particular have passion, but they don't always have compassion for everyone. And this is a time where you have to look at everyone and have compassion. And I just listened to a webinar, and I think many people know Renee Myers, who is from Boston. And I listened to her TED Talk, and she actually talked about her early years in a law firm. And the fact that, initially it was, oh, don't get too close to the associates because you never know who's going to be here in the future and you're going to have to evaluate them. And, that was sort of the training that went on. But the fact that, many of us realize that's not the way that it should be. So I think, in this time of COVID, I think it is clearly having that compassion and the willingness to accept a new world, a new skill set. Remote work is here to stay.
Right.
And working with technology is going to be a part of our everyday. So the willingness to change and encourage us to change and having that compassion, I think, is an important part of leadership today.
I love that. That's why you're one of my key mentors. We touched on this a little bit. Describe some of the differences and similarities of leading a federal agency and leading a college for me.
I will say one of the definite similarities is the very strong belief in mission. That in the federal government, people go to the government to serve. They have the passion for what it is they do. It's the same way in academia. The people who are in academia clearly are passionate about the subject matter, but they're also passionate about the students. They're passionate about the community. So I think that is extremely similar. I think some of the differences, and again, I think it's, there are more similarities, with respect to budgeting, everything else than people might imagine. I think some of the differences are a little bit of the governance, something you, Mielle, I'm sure are very familiar with. In the federal government, I had the wonderful honor of being in an agency that was a sub-cabinet agency. So my boss, in essence, was the president. There was nobody else. There wasn't a board. There wasn't. So it was the ability to make decisions and implement decisions with the group as a whole. In academia, there's shared governance. So it's, the faculty has say with respect to the academics, but are also a partner with you with respect to the institution itself. And there's a board of trustees that has a fiduciary responsibility as well. So the decision-making structure is different in academia. And I would say there's also a little bit that in government, there was a little bit of a practical purpose. And in academia, it's a little more of a magical purpose.
Oh, I love that thought. That's a great way to put it. What parts of your new role do you find most rewarding and most challenging?
Well, the rewarding, I have to say, and the students, I think, are tired of hearing me say it, and I'm not sure they totally believe me anymore. But the students are one of the most rewarding part of this opportunity. I say they inspire me every day, and it's true. If I have a day that I'm working on the budget or trying to figure something out, and I'm like, oh, all I have to do is walk out on the quad and just see these amazing students and what it is that they're doing. And I have to say, on our campus, in addition to our students being incredibly intelligent and thoughtful and compassionate, they're kind. So if you walk onto the quad, they're going to say hello and they're going to ask how you are. And it's absolutely amazing. And being in an environment that is known for social mobility, where we have been recognized as #2 in the country for liberal arts colleges, of having students be able to come on Pell Grants and move all the way to graduation, is incredibly rewarding. So, it's what I really love. I will say probably the biggest challenge is a little bit of what we talked about before. It's true, academia has a cycle. So sometimes it's the timing. You have to wait for some things. And I will say the pace sometimes can be challenging if you're not accustomed to those cycles of seeing it all the way through, or you can't get something done because of the fact it's a certain break time. So I will say that the timing and wanting to move quickly is something that you have to adjust to a little bit in academia.
Yes, it's very different. I wanted to touch on this. If I had to do college all over again, I might have chosen an all-women's college. But because Agnes Scott is, I want to ask you, do you think women lead differently than men at normal times during a crisis? This question has emerged lately as we look at world leaders dealing with COVID, such as the president of New Zealand, whom I think has done a phenomenal job. But do you think women, I wanted to talk about leading during a crisis and women's leadership styles. Do we lead differently? Do you lead differently, do you think?
This is something I've studied, I will say. I'm fascinated by. I actually really do think that women lead differently. There's a wonderful book that I actually had given to my chief of staff when I was at USTDA, right as I was hiring him, which is called Broad Influence. And it talks about sort of women and how they lead. It happens to be talking about, being in the White House, but basically gives a broader history. And one of the things I think is extremely true is that women are collaborative when they lead, that they are much more likely to also, and again, if you study it, women are much more likely to reach across the aisle. I like to say they're less tribal than men may be, and that it's sometimes and unfortunately, it's sometimes misunderstood because men think that when women are asking other people's opinion, that it's a sign of lack of strength, not recognizing it actually is strength to put your own ego aside and to ask other people what their opinion is and to try to come to consensus. in this day and age, I would say, with respect to COVID, men are having to lead more like women. That they have to show that compassion, they have to be collaborative, they have to find ways to bring people together, which is something that women, have been doing forever. So I do think that men, especially at this time, have a lot to learn from women and how women lead.
Agreed. Now, well, do you think we'll see a woman president in our lifetime? Speaking of
I
women leaders,
certainly hope so. I certainly hope so.
we're getting close. We're getting close. Because we shifted to online delivery of education, and I'm assuming that you did that as well at Agnes Scott during the last few months, et cetera. Do you think there's any danger of in-person higher education being replaced permanently? And where do you see the online component going as we go forward?
Well, I have to say, going online is one of the areas where we did see academia go against its nature and move quickly. And I was really happy and really grateful to our amazing faculty and staff, and the fact that they were able to pivot in a 2-week time.
Yeah.
So, really thrilled with what they've done. For the fall, we are going to have hybrid education, which will include in class as well as online. So, where for an area which is known for being a slow adapter, we adapted pretty quickly when we need to. However, I think there will always be a need for and a place for being on campus. That in particular with places like Agnes Scott or liberal arts colleges, the education is not just what's in the classroom. And I would say that's with Northeastern and cooperative education as well. The education is not just in the classroom, it's what's happening around you too. We're very purposeful with respect to our co-curricular activities, ensuring that they are enhancing leadership skills, ensuring that we have an understanding of one another through courageous conversations, that these are things that are happening on the campus that wouldn't necessarily happen. We also bringing a diverse group of people together. We have students who we have white students who've never been in class with a student of color before, and vice versa. So it's an experience, not just what one is getting online, and not just what's getting online in the same environment that the individual has always been. So I think that there will always be a place for people to come together on campus, but I actually think that it's enhanced with technology. And, one of the things that I'm really excited about is the doors that technology has opened for students. We're thrilled to have amazing internship opportunities for our students in the area. And we have a sophomore program called Scale, which are leadership opportunities in Atlanta. But when we think about internship opportunities in the future, they could be anywhere. That now our students are doing internship opportunities this summer online. Well, they could be doing them in Atlanta, or they could be doing them in Nigeria. So I think technology has opened a whole new world in higher ed that is here to stay. And I think there are many benefits for our students.
I would agree. We're going with a program called NU Flex for the undergraduate institution in the fall, which is basically a hybrid model as well. And the law school is also going to be in some format hybrid, and technology is now here to stay. And I don't know, do you have a lot of international students there? And
We actually still have some of our international students who are unable to go home.
Right.
We are concerned that for the fall, we will not have as many international students for a variety of reasons than we did in the past. So I think that across the country is a great loss. I think both with respect to COVID and the political environment, it is a great loss not to have more interaction with our international students.
I would agree. So 5 years ago, did you see yourself as president of a university, and where do you see yourself in 2025? And talk about risk taking a little bit more again.
I would say probably about 4 years ago, when I knew, I mean, part of coming to an end of a 2-year administration is, you're going to be leaving. So one of the things is, what are you going to do next? I had two answers. I was either going to be a ski bum, or I was going to be a college president. Those are my two answers. The ski bum, the skill set wasn't quite as strong for a ski bum. So I went for the college president. And the reason I really focused on that is I really believe that my education has made me who I am. That Mount Holyoke College, being a women's college, being a liberal arts college, gave me the skill set to be able to go on to law school, and also the skill set that I use every day. Northeastern, with its co-op program, I would never have chosen the area of law I ultimately practiced in if I had not gone to Northeastern, if I hadn't been exposed to it. And by the way, the reason I was at Mintz Levin is because I was a co-op student at Mintz Levin. So, those opportunities that came. So I recognized that I had also developed a skill set. Having been a chief operating officer, having led an organization, that in the academy today, it's just in academics today, it's so important to be able to have that skill set. That it more and more, because of financial considerations with respect to education, that the skill set of being able to look at the finances was necessary. So I wanted to give back and thought that I now had a skill set, in addition teaching, at Georgetown and BU, that I had a skill set that I could really bring and make a difference and give back to what made me who I am.
You absolutely do. Is there anything else you think our listeners should hear about today?
Well, I mean, again, I have to say, I so believe in the mission of Northeastern University Law School, the focus on social justice, that is such a part of the education, that I cannot say enough about the co-op program, that I really believe in the practical education. And again, that whole experience has fit so well with me and Agnes Scott. And one of the things that, we are very focused on is our postgraduate success for our students as well. And that's very much learning. Our whole campus is focused on that. But for me, it's very personal. It's personal from what I learned at Northeastern as well as Mount Holyoke. So education stays with you for your entire life.
That's so true. Well, I so enjoyed my time with you today. I appreciate your sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your leadership style, what makes a great leader. That's also important right now. It's really encouraging. I just enjoy you. I hope our listeners and viewers got to see why I enjoy you so much. You're so down to earth and compassionate, and that does shine through. So thank you. I know you're incredibly busy. So thank you for fitting your alma mater in, and we're proud of you. We're really, really proud of you. And I can't wait to see what you do going forward as well, both at Agnes Scott and perhaps afterwards. But thank you for spending time with us and for sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mielle. You're the best. You really are. I've enjoyed working with you through these years, and you are just absolutely awesome. They're so fortunate to have you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I will be in touch, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.